Anyway, we can get into the bread and butter of the fucking show today, and start talking about this. What was it called? The left panel that Marianne Williamson was putting on, where she was trying to basically fundraise for a lot of the up and coming candidates that she's endorsed. Didn't quite go over the way that I think maybe they were anticipating. It was called Left Takeover, Seizing the House. A lot of the candidates on here are people we've talked to in the past. That was, you briefly just saw a friend of the show, Jason Call, great guy from Washington. I think before that, Rebecca Parsons, I saw pop up on the screen, another comrade from Washington. These are, Nina Turner was there. Yeah.
Yeah, so right here you can even see an example in the chat replay. Look at some of these messages. Jimmy Dore interviewed AOC when she was running and she flipped. So elitist. Someone says she worked for Obama, and I think this is Allie Dulcimer, who we actually also interviewed. She's running in the state of Virginia. She seems pretty based. I think she worked in like the energy department or something like that, like the energy sector, or maybe the environmental sector, I want to say. But it's not like she was like a close crony of Obama, or you know what I mean? So I don't know how fair that is, but anyway, this point stands that people seem to be a little bit unamused by this whole concept. Again, she worked for Obama. Disqualified Obama official. Someone says tough crowd, acknowledging the fact that people aren't exactly digging this. And if you go through the chat, you can see a lot of this stuff throughout the chat replay. Boutique left can't fool us. What happened to Justice Democrats? They just took the PAC money. Pelosi forced AOC to fall in line. You guys aren't challenging power. So they're like trying their best to put on this, productive panel endorsing and giving exposure to lefty candidates. And the chat just ain't feeling it, guys. The movement isn't necessarily here anymore. And I admittedly have a little bit of mixed feelings about this whole panel and its reactions, because, I think these candidates' hearts are definitely in the right place, at least for the most part, as far as I can tell. Of course, I would have said the same thing about AOC, and she turned out to be a disappointment. So I definitely understand where the skepticism is coming from. I think that Marianne Williamson, Briahna Joy Gray, Krystal Ball, everyone that was involved in this panel obviously is trying to do the right thing here by, giving these corporate free candidates a platform, somewhere to get a little bit more exposure. So they're clearly doing a great thing there, and I give them total credit for trying their best to keep this movement alive. But I think the response here is kind of proof that the movement just isn't really alive in the same way it was in 2018 or even 2020. It really feels like a lot of that momentum and energy has fizzled out, not just because Bernie Sanders is no longer ascendant as this presidential contender, but because we've just been so frankly disappointed by the results of the progressives in Congress that are there, the AOCs, the Ro Khannas, the Jamal Bowmans of the world. Every once in a while they do something impressive, but for the most part, it's just been disappointment after disappointment. Not that they're as bad as some of the real, swamp monster corporate Dems or anything, but disappointing enough that people don't really feel as enthused about this path anymore, at least not enough to give them their hard-earned money or really, invest much time or energy in these races. And again, I think that's fair. And look here, if we scroll down, you'll see some more of this. No Democrat will fight for progressive policy unless there's massive leverage. Voting third party is one of the few methods for gaining leverage. I'll never vote for a Democrat while the party operates on behalf of the imperial oligarchy. And yeah, this is definitely a sentiment that a lot of people have shared. I do say, if I have one criticism of this panel, it's that I don't know if they reached out to any third party candidates, but I imagine that if they had, they would have been more than happy to participate. And there are a couple good candidates running as third parties. There's a Green Party candidate running for governor of Texas that we talked to. There's I think someone running for a Senate seat in either California or Montana that's a Green. There's a couple different candidates. There's Jose Cortez, who's running as a Peace and Freedom Party candidate in California. We talked to that comrade. So, there are third-party candidates that also would have appreciated and definitely need this exposure. So I don't know why they weren't included in this panel. It does seem like it's basically all Democrats, as far as what I could tell just from what I saw and from, glancing over these options. And again, these are good candidates, don't get me wrong. But I don't know why it was necessary to exclude third-party candidates, Green Party, etc. I think that would have been a good addition to this as well. But anyway, it's definitely interesting to see this response. And I think more than anything, just very indicative of where the progressive movement is right now and how deflated it is energy-wise.
Yeah, where it is in the fucking garbage is what it feels like. And geez, yeah, I didn't watch all this because it was like fucking 3 hours long. But every time I look at somebody's face, I'm like, oh yeah, we've talked to this person. So I mean, it, I mean, Nina Turner never came on the Vanguard, but outside of that, a lot of the smaller candidates we have spoken with, and yeah, you know what I mean. So I think that it's. I don't know. It's one of those tough deals where it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not giving my money to any fucking candidates for the Democratic Party. Are you shitting me? Like, look what the Democratic Party is doing right now that they have the House, the Senate, and the fucking presidential executive branch, right? Not shit. They literally are doing fucking nothing. They have no, they have all the power that they're going to have for the next fucking 4 years for sure. And they're pissing it away like crazy. So it's just stupid to me that the idea would be that we just need to get more Democrats in there, right? Like that just seems like lazy thinking. It seems like status quo mindset, status quo mentality. It seems defeatist. Like, oh, this like, and it also just seems like, and I'm sorry, right? Because I like and respect a lot of the people that did this panel. 100% their hearts are in the right place. But it does feel like a little bit stuck in the past. Like you're not 100% plugged into where your audience is. It doesn't seem like you're plugged into where the progressive movement is. It seems like you've been a little bit out of touch with what's left of the base, right? You know, I was talking to Gavin about how, you know, back in the day, you used to really just be able to, because the progressive, there was so much more hope and, you know, energy and enthusiasm that you used to just be able to kind of coast by as a content creator for the left. You would just have people on, you know, rah Medicare for all. Yes, Bernie Sanders is amazing. Like, yes, we're all going to fight for those things on that day when it becomes a reality. And then we all kind of lived through that for a couple of years and we were like, hey, wait, this actually isn't working. So now it's frustrating and eye rolling to see people who are, as best we have, the leaders of the online left. And I don't like calling people the online left because we're all real people with real fucking lives. And the only way that we can kind of, you know, gel together is the internet, right? So it's not like it's like a pretend, incoherent, like non-existent mass. It's real people with real political inclinations. And I just feel like we've all moved so far beyond this, right? That if you're going to do like just Democrats being interviewed the same way that you would have done in 2020, the same way that you would have done in 2018, and frankly in 2016 as well, back when you would have gotten a lot more engagement for something like this, it just seems like out of step with where regular people are, and that's a bit of a bummer, right? You know, not something that I feel like I would normally expect from this crowd. And again, not to like poo-poo their efforts, like everybody's entitled to make the case that they want to make. I would just say that I think that, you know, we already know that this is a failed effort and we need to try something different. And if you're going to keep trying to sell people shit that we know isn't going to work, like they're going to get fucking mad at you. So I don't know what else to say other than the fact that, you know, I don't think any, like, you know, Briahna Joy Gray is not a stranger to, you know, engaging with third party people. I don't think it's necessarily that, like, you know, all these people are opposed to third party. I think Marianne Williamson would maybe even consider running third party. I think it's a little bit of an out of touch mindset where they don't really know like how much we've all been like, yeah, fuck this idea of running with the Democratic Party, because look at what the Democratic Party is doing. And, you know, there's all kinds of pushback arguments that I'm sure they would offer. But I feel like that's the same arguments that everybody's always given. And they're still, I don't know. It feels off. If every bit that I watched of this, I was like, I don't think people are going to connect with this. And then I was kind of right.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of enthusiasm. Again, I respect the efforts. I think their heart's definitely in the right place. But yeah, our ethos here at the Vanguard is if we're going to talk to a candidate, specifically someone running as a Democrat, the first question is always, why should people donate to you? Why do you deserve people's hard-earned money that could be going to mutual aid causes or to feeding the homeless in your community or actually uplifting your fellow community members, instead of throwing it at some like, you know, borderline doomed race that, you know, there's like a 1 in 100,000 chance is going to actually turn out, and that's just the harsh reality, especially when we don't have a Bernie Sanders like movement leader that's really carrying the wind behind him and you know, making room for this ideology and movement. And unfortunately that just doesn't exist right now. I hope it comes back. You know, I hope there is another Bernie Sanders style, you know, candidate and political revolution that happens at some point, but that's just not going on right now. And yeah, this unfortunate, and especially in 2022 when Democrats are totally going to get wiped out in the House anyway, you know, it's just kind of unrealistic at this point. But that being said, I also don't want to shit on these, you know, sincere efforts to build a corporate-free caucus in the Congress, which is necessary. So again, I definitely have mixed feelings on this. On one hand, I do feel a little bit bad for Krystal and Briahna and Marianne and Katie Halper for putting this on and just to get shit on. But I think that, yeah, they should reflect on some of the criticisms. They should have had some third-party candidates on, and they should, take maybe a potentially slightly more skeptical tone when talking to some of these candidates about why it's really worth people's time and money to invest in the first place, when the results we've seen from similar experiments haven't exactly been terribly inspiring. In fact, they've been quite disappointing.